Good evening, good evening, good evening. Some of you may not see this video until tomorrow because it's pretty late in the evening today, Sunday. Um, you know, I want to explain first why I'm doing this video and what is it I do, right? That's relevant to the video. I'm doing this video because I really need to make it clear to people that I don't do what's so-called activism for attention. I don't do it for praise. I don't do it for money. I don't do it for political standing or power, right? I have a radio program that comes on every Thursday at 6 on WLTH Radio. It also streams on Facebook, YouTube, and the World Wide Web, or you can listen to it every Thursday at 6 on the WLTH app. But sometimes I make these videos and I may do them live on Facebook. Sometimes they're pre-recorded. But I just wanted to make that point. And what does it mean, what I'm saying, and how it benefits you, right? Many times I take up issues, and I'm going to bullet point some of those issues I take up, because this is my way of giving back to my community, one. This is my way of correcting some of my own historic misdeeds and conduct as a young man in my community. And I live in my community and a member of my community. And I think it's the right thing to do as an adult male to advocate on behalf of the occupants in my community. So I think it's pretty normal what I'm doing, considering the circumstances that my community is in right now. So one of the things I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about several things. I bullet pointed them, and I'm going to try to touch on them briefly. If any one of you want to call me later about this stuff, my phone number is 219-716-0700. I try to be more transparent than our government or the people responsible for some of the things I'm going to talk to you about. Okay, number one, real quick, it's been a lot of media attention to data centers. We've had data centers for some time. We all use them. If you have cloud storage, etc. My quick advice and off-the-cuff advice to people that are against the data centers: no matter win, lose, or draw, if we're successful in stopping the explosion of them or whatever, one of the ways you can do to help is to reduce the demand and the burden on the data centers. So if you have extra pictures in your phone, erase them. Don't store things that's not really needed to be in a cloud, in a remote location, in a cloud. Get hard drives and store large volumes of things or high content data at home, or keep your data personal on a hard drive, a large hard drive or file, and reduce your use of data centers. Don't look at much TV every day. Online TV, Netflix, Amazon Prime, all this stuff is stored in data centers. When you're doing computations on your computer, don't save it in the cloud unless necessary. And AI is going to increase the use of data centers, of course, but you're going to also have people that may be renting data center space. So if you're going to advocate for the actual companies that store data to own their own data centers and to pay to power them themselves. That's one way you could do that too. In another vein, the laws, specifically here in the state of Indiana, we have a Senate Bill 424 and 423. Particularly 424 allows utility companies, with the approval of the Utility Regulatory Commission, to charge fees on our utility bills for monies, to raise money to build, research, and develop small modular reactors for electricity for data centers. This is wrong. I'm avidly against it. It's my understanding that some of our local legislators voted against it. I'm asking that this bill be repealed. Those that are against data centers, I don't have the same exact view you have of them. However, I do believe that we should not be charged on our utility bill to develop power stations in the form of small modular reactors, which are smaller than nuclear reactors, to power these data centers. As ratepayers, we should only pay for the electricity we're using, not to buy a future asset that is not only accessible, but that can possibly be refinanced and generate revenue for a private entity such as a utility company. That is inherently wrong, and I can't believe the bill was not only introduced, but it was passed some time ago. So get with your local legislators, anybody in the state of Indiana. Reagan Hatcher is one, Mark Spencer is one, Vernon Smith is one, Rodney Pohl is another. Get with those guys, at least in our area, and whatever area you live in. Get with those guys and ask them to introduce legislation to repeal Senate Bill 424, because that's an illegal tax. That's basically a tax put on top of your utility bill that isn't proper, okay? Also, city ordinance for stormwater and sanitation in the city of Gary. We have 2 ordinances that was tabled. They're going to come back. More than likely, the city is going to pass this. When I talked to the city officials about this, several city officials, they suggest that it could be amended later. The biggest problem, this is 2 different bills. The biggest problem with it, let's take the stormwater first. It's going to make me personally, my stormwater bill at one of my commercial properties double. And not only double, it's going to be more than my property tax, which may in fact violate the Indiana Constitution cap on property taxes. So you have a cap, a fixed rate that you can pay under the Constitution on your property tax. And then in turn, they come up with a stormwater fee that's on your tax bill, and we call it a fee, right? And we're not rate users because we don't use stormwater, right? Depending on your structure, how large your structure is, how much non-penetratable land you have around your structure that don't absorb water, is how much of a burden of the stormwater you may drain off. And that varies from property to property, right? And residential properties are exempted from this increase at this time. But if it happens to commercial, which includes multi-unit residential buildings, it's going to drive up rent rates. It's going to drive up commercial rent. It's going to drive up multi-unit rents. So it's suggested that all commercial property in the city of Gary pay $90 a month, right? This is $10.50 a year, $90 a month in stormwater. This is not sewer, this is just stormwater, the rainwater, right, for the sewers. And I'm not going to get into the reasons why. I talked in another video about that. But I recommend that you contact your city council member and tell them that you want a tiered system, because basically what's happening to us is the quality of life isn't moving nowhere near the pace that the cost of life is moving in Gary. And I understand we've been behind, the property value's been behind, some of the cost of living been behind the national average, the state average. I get it. I understand we have to come up with this money, and I shared my own ideas in another video about how we can come up with money for the sanitation department. And I'm going to do a special video on that, maybe even take up a petition recommending that the city and sanitation department endorse this idea, right? And it all leads back to land usage, which I'm going to bring up later. And the stormwater, the sanitation bill, it's a proposal to raise the sanitation bills as well for commercial properties. And throwing more money at the problem is not going to fix it if we don't have good management of the Gary Sanitation Department. And one of the problems I take with the sanitation department right now is, which it was a Senate bill introduced for that, and a law passed for that, the buying of vehicles for use for the executive. At the Calumet Township, we may or may not have this problem. I did a FOIA request asking about the vehicle lease for the Calumet Township trustee office, right? There was an Indiana bill passed barring staff from buying premium vehicles. You're supposed to buy a base model vehicle if you in fact need a vehicle in your duties at one of the departments, right? So I think that's being abused a little bit. And another thing with the Gary Sanitation District, we're placing bills on non-owners, right? So if you're a property owner and a tenant run up a sanitation bill, the rule is if they're 60 days late, within 20 days of being 60 days late, they need to give the property owner a notice that they may come after the property owner for the late sanitation bill. At least this gives the property owner an opportunity to bill the tenant or pressure the tenant for the bill, or include in a lease that failure to pay your sanitation bill is a violation of the lease. However, we have something different happening. We have the sanitation department going back in old records, one where they didn't send out the 20-day notice after 60 days of late, they're going back as far as 3 years. And sometimes they're asking owners who didn't even own the property at the time, a previous non-owner or tenant or previous person had a bill in their name, and trying to collect on these old bills. Basically, the sins of the father are falling on the son. I know a lot about this issue because I argued it in court in 2021 against the county auditor's office in a tax sale case in which I was being barred for the tax sale and claimed to be responsible for a property tax bill on a property which I was never the owner and never on the deed, simply because I worked for the company as a registered agent who actually owned the property and had the back taxes. And even I didn't receive notice, and had I received notice and wanted to pay it, I couldn't pay it because the bill wasn't correct, because the taxes were being assessed for a structure that did not exist on the property. It was vacant land that had been tore down years, and the property bill lapsed for years with assessed value for improvement that didn't exist. So this is a slippery slope that we enter with this, making other people pay someone else's bills, right? So that's a problem. So I did do a FOIA to the Calumet Township about the car leases. I did a FOIA to the Calumet Assessor, also about some other information I will touch on later in the video, right? But we should not bar people from the tax sale for somebody else's bill, just as we should not lien people property for someone else's sanitation bill. That's going to be challenged, and I think it's going to be found to be illegal. In the meantime, the city council does have the power within the municipality to issue an ordinance barring the Gary Sanitation District from liening property for bills other than the owner. They have the ability to do that in a clause in that same statute. I've been asked more than once to produce that clause and give it to the city council members. I don't know why they don't talk to Renzer, who is the attorney for the city council, and ask them to do it, but I would make some time and I'll comply and do that. Airport TIFs. Recently, we had an airport TIF passed back in the spring. Not just a TIF, but the airport is sitting in a TIF, which is the largest TIF in the city. So I misspoke. We had a bond passed by the airport board, and the bond also endorsed by the city council or passed by the city council. And basically, I don't know if this is a revenue bond or a bond paid from the taxes. If it's a revenue bond, that means the bond is paid from some identifiable revenue that's generated by the city specifically. If it's a bond that's paid by the taxes, that means it's paid by the taxpayers. So technically, this is a $19 million bond. So we have to be careful who we vote for, because when we vote for people, we give them permission to put debt on us as individuals. They got permission to seek credit in our name, and they control the spending of the revenue that we generate, and they dictate laws, policies, and practice that the outcome affect how much revenue we generate or don't generate. And this public revenue that we generate, that I keep mentioning, is what's used to manage the city. So when you have your leadership tell you, we don't have funding for this, or you see this broken or that broken, or you want this fixed, if the elected officials are not willing to have a discussion with you about proactive things we can organically do to generate revenue other than ask the state and the federal government, then that's a problem. We have to have a conversation with them about that. So anyway, we got this $19 million bond. So if you divide the $19 million by the population of the city, that technically means every man, woman, and child has been put in debt $316 to pay this $19 million bond. That's if it's from our tax base. Now you may say every man, woman, and child in the city of Gary don't pay taxes or into the tax base. That's true. So that means the burden fall on those that do. So let's say it's 1/3 of the city. So you take 1/3 of the city, which is 20-something odd thousand, divide that by $19 million. That means that those people are paying that amount individually. That's almost $1,000 a piece. You're paying almost $1,000 a piece into a bond to purchase something or pay for something at the airport that you know nothing about. We don't even know if this thing that the bond is created for generate revenue to make the money back, or what value does that bring to us since we're paying for the bond. we need to ask ourselves that. We need to ask our leadership that. One name that I would give you that I feel should be accessible, coincidentally, one of the airport board members is Steve Mays, who happened to be the president of the NAACP Gary chapter. So the NAACP, it sounds to me, should be a entity that should be at the forefront of looking out for our interests, since we have an 80-something% African American population, and he's on the airport board. So he should be the perfect person to ask about this $19 million bond. One, how is it going to be repaid? Is it a revenue bond or a tax bond? Two, what's the purpose of the bond? And three, do we get a return, and what's the return of that bond? So contact Steve Mays, the president over the NAACP, and ask him about that. The Gary School Corporation. I did a FOIA today that I'm going to submit tomorrow, and I did a petition, and thank you guys who signed the petition. We got almost 400 signatures, and we plan to have a parents event soon. We have a parents pizza party, but it's not really just a party. It's for the purpose of educating the parents on their civic duty to not just vote, but to understand how revenue is generated in the city where their kids go to the school system. Because without proper revenue generation, we won't have the resources to educate the kids properly. So the parents, the co-parents, the single parents, the parents with whole households, we're going to invite you all out, and we want to go over this with you, and we're going to have a call to action at the end of the gathering that you can help our children. We can all help our children, right? And then we have a separate gathering for people who don't have kids in the school system. I think we all need to get involved in that. The Gary School Corporation, between the years of 2019 to 2024, it received in revenue from various sources almost $500 million, 400-something million odd dollars. But yet our school system is the way it is after this amount of money. 84 million allegedly went to the Gary School Corporation, whether it was shared with charters or not, due to COVID alone. So we're asking in a FOIA request, a public records request, we're asking under the Indiana statute for a release of all the expenditures from 2019 to 2024. At this time, I'm not making any accusations of criminal activity, theft, misappropriation, or mismanagement. But we'll see what the expenditures reveal. It shouldn't be a problem releasing that public information, and we go through it, and I'll report to you guys what we find. The Calumet Township Assessor is different from the Calumet Township Office, so I just thought I'd mention that. And what's triggering my mentioning that is this. I received a telephone call about 3 days ago from the Calumet Township Assessor's Office. The assessor assessed property in the Calumet Township, which includes the city of Gary and Calumet Township, and I don't know what other area off the top of my head at this time. But anyway, I submitted a request asking for a copy of the lease and the rent rate, because the Calumet Township office on 5th Avenue is owned by a private individual that has it in a trust fund. And we pay rent. And with as much city and public property we own, we should not be paying rent for a Calumet Township Assessor's Office, unless there's a good reason to do so. We can move into the county building, or we can get our own building. And depending on what the monthly rent is, we'd probably be better off owning a building, right? So I made an inquiry into that. But anyway, the phone call I received was from a staff member that I happen to know personally, and I didn't know they worked there, or either I forgot. But they asked me some weird questions. One, they declared my request wasn't a FOIA or wasn't a public records request, as if it's just a casual letter, despite the fact it cites the statute for public records requests. Two, they're not an attorney, by the way. Two, they brought up the request of another citizen and mentioned that how that request mirrored mine and was filled out the same way, except that the name and the asking information, they asked for some different information, was mentioned, which I don't know why they would bring that up. That citizen has a right to use the same template I used. What's the big deal? Lastly, they said they were not going to send me the information via U.S. mail because the address, the return address on my mail or my envelope didn't match an address associated with me. What kind of communist shit is that? It's none of your business whether or not the address is so. Why are you looking up my return address to see if my name on the property to send me public records. That doesn't make sense to me, right? You want to know something about the address I use? Ask me, 219-716-0700. It could be a relative's address, but that's neither here nor there, and that's not a requirement for you releasing the public information. And yet, my request asked them to email it to me, and they said they would email me the information. Thank God, but I don't know why that was an issue. They spoke as if they had some type of attitude or problem with my request. And for some reason, we have a lot of local employees, they talk as if they have policing powers over the citizens. We're free people. And people, I ask you to snap out of it. Act like you're free, because we are. The GHA land holdings and the library. It's my understanding, and I'm investigating this, that the former W.E.B. Du Bois Library, of course, is owned by the GHA. I brought my receipts and showed you that the same day they bought this, they contracted for 2 years to do a contract to sell it to the non-for-profit that belongs to the executive director of the GHA. Conflict all the way around the board. Conflict. Kind of like the Gary Sanitation Board conflict. The attorney, Jewel Harris Jr., right? Everybody know Jewel Harris. At least you probably know Jewel Harris Sr., right? Was involved in the baseball park scandal. This is the son. He's a lawyer. And the dad, you know, right now he's billing the city more, and I think in inappropriate fees and billings than any amount of money his dad ever stole from the city, right? Right now he's the attorney for the Gary Sanitation District, but he's also owns the collection agency that collects the bill for the Gary Sanitation District. So let's say I got a bill in collections for the Gary Sanitation District, and this collection firm that's owned by the lawyer for the Sanitation District is trying to collect the money. And my defense is, one, I didn't receive proper notice of the debt within 20 days after the tenant was 60 days past due. Do you think he's going to tell on himself and agree that he didn't send it, that his law firm didn't do proper notice for the sanitation district? So he's going to testify against himself. You know, citizens, we got the Fifth Amendment where we don't have to incriminate ourselves. So his credit reporting or collection agency is going to act in any way adverse to his representation of the same client or the same entity, or vice versa. So make it make sense. So the same thing with this GHA sale of the library. Now, it's my understanding, now this was bought with federal or state money. It doesn't matter. It was purchased with money that's earmarked for housing. The mission statement of the Gary Housing Authority is for clean, safe, sanitary housing for the Gary citizens or residents. How is it you buying a library? How does that promote housing? First, it's supposed to have been a vision center. After I got court transcripts, right, where the executive director testifies in court that the vision center is at 600 block of Broadway. Now it's at the library. So let's say it is at the library. They're going to move the GHA offices there, which is the recent lie that I was told. Now I'm discovering that the library is being place held with your tax dollars for a library for the Hatcher family, or a civil rights museum in honor of our former mayor, Richard Hatcher. And I adore Richard Hatcher. In fact, I attempt to kind of emulate him in some ways in how I stand up for myself here and stand up or advocate for the residents here. And I have no problem with us having a civil rights museum or a Gordon Hatcher library. I do have a problem taking our tax dollars that's earmarked for housing without the permission of the citizens to do this and buy this building as a set aside, only to just gift it away later to the Hatcher Foundation. If they're going to put a civil rights museum there, Reagan and the rest of the family, or whoever's involved, I doubt if even the Hatcher, I doubt if all the Hatcher family is involved in this, because from what I know of them, I would think they're reputable enough to move differently. But at any rate, let's say this allegation is true. The citizens of Gary, by way of the Gary Housing Authority, should be reimbursed the $200,000 plus that we spent to buy the library. That money should be reimbursed. Too often in this city, your tax dollars is taken and purchase things, and those things are gifted away. The same way the MGT gave away the city school corporation property. Those parcels were assets for the children's education. Those parcels could have been liquidated by a regular real estate agent for the highest bidder, right? And those funds could have been used to do some of the current $12.5 million in improvements in the current Gary School Corporation budget that they're seeking to do improvements in the schools right now. $12.5 million today that they're looking for, or just recently the board approved to spend in repairs in the school district. And they may need the repairs. But if they need the repairs, what were they doing during 2019 to 2024 with the $400 million they received? Good question. Anyway, city-owned property, and I'm going to cite some data for you right now, and you can check this with the county records, right? And I made this into a handout. So those of you who want me to email you or give you this handout, I created a handout for this, a one-page simple handout with the facts. Just text me at 219-716-0700, right? We have 6,089 city-owned properties according to county records, and they have been updated. We're adding on more. It's my understanding that the city hall today is pulling more properties from the commissioner's office into the city coffers. The total acreage is 6,144.6 acres, right? So that's about 1,000 acres average a parcel. The total assessed value, the assessed value of these parcels are $214,210. $214 million in assessed value. Imagine if the average tax bill on those parcels, if they was private, was just 2%. That's a lot of money, right? The parcels with actual structures or improvements on them is 406. So just 6.7% of all those parcels have improvements on it. But that's not really a small number. That's 407 structures, right, in the city name. Let's say the city is using 100 of those structures. Let's say some of them are YMCAs, whatever they are, libraries. Let's say 100 of those structures are being used. That's 300 structures we could sell to put back on the tax rolls. Let's say my numbers is bad and the city is using 50%. That's still 200. That's 200 something odd structures that's able to be sold and put back on the tax rolls. My point I'm getting at is this. The average acreage, like I said, is 1,040. The average value for the group of those properties with structures is, the average assessed value is $145,027,100. Those structured properties, those properties with improvements on those parcels with buildings on them or structures, they make up 67.7% of the $214 million. Parcels that are vacant land, there's 5,600 of them, and all of them may not be usable. They make up 93% of the city-owned property is vacant land. The acreage in that group is 5,000 acres, 83% of the acreage. The assessed value for that group is $69 million. So it only make up 32% of the assessed value. So these parcels with improvement on them, there's some significant assessed value sitting idle where we're not generating revenue or taxes from that. We're not contributing to the tax base from that. This doesn't count all the privately held structures throughout the city that have late tax bills or no taxes are being held at all. This doesn't count the inappropriate exempt parcels throughout the city. So I thought I'd share that with you guys tonight. And the reason why I brought up, I have another transcript too. This transcript is from case number 45C012008TS1. And it's in the matter of the 2021 Lake County tax sale and John Allen. You know, a lot of people, they think that they're adversaries of me because I kind of crack the whip about certain issues in the community. But I go to court about these issues myself and been doing so for many years. prior to 2001. I just been doing it silently. But I do this to argue for all you guys, right? And this is a transcript, if any of you guys want to copy this transcript, because it's unreal, right? Where I had to go before a judge to argue for my right to participate in the Lake County tax sale, not because somebody simply had a namesake, because John Allen is a popular name. My name get mixed up with other people's name all the time, but because I worked somewhere and my boss or employer had a late tax bill in a property that had nothing to do with me. Think about that. Your boss is late with his property taxes, and you're penalized for your boss's late tax bill. And the only way to get around the penalty is to pay the tax bill. Who does that? This is where our country is going, right? This is in 2001. We're killing people on boats in areas where we don't have jurisdiction, alleging that they're committing a crime that don't even carry the death penalty. We have citizens that talk about violating each other's civil rights and First Amendment rights. The Ninth Amendment, where the citizens reserve all rights to police and navigate their own lives. Those things are not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. We have the 10th Amendment, where the state has their rights, state rights separate from federal rights, that's not specifically given in the Constitution or organized or structured by congressional law or act of Congress. You know, this is at the root of the problem, I feel, of our city. Revenue generation, misappropriation, small thinking, clannish thinking, where we create reasons to hate each other for different reasons. We're more interested in setting ourselves up in groups and cliques, so much so I have people walking around this city that hate me, never had a conversation with me, simply because they have a certain office or a position, and I had the audacity to exercise my constitutional right to contest a public policy that hurts all of us. With that being said, I'm going to get off of here. I talked a little bit longer than I expected, but I had to get all this information in. You check out We the People radio on WOTH Radio, 92.7 FM every Thursday night, or AM 1370 every Thursday night at 6. You can also, which I recommend, you can catch it streaming on Facebook on the WOTH Facebook page. You can catch it on the WOTH page on YouTube, streaming live Thursday nights, or you can go back and look at old programs. Thanks a lot. Again, my name is John Allen, and I look forward to helping you guys. Bye-bye.